Commander Alex stared at the blinking dot on the monitor, a frown deepening on his weathered face. 15 years aboard Delta 7 space station, and he'd never seen anything like it. The object was moving too fast, changing direction too sharply. Nothing natural moved like that. "Tom, run the analysis again," he ordered, his voice steady despite the unease building in his chest. Lieutenant Tom nodded, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Already on it, sir, but the results will be the same. Whatever this is, it's not an asteroid, not a comet, and definitely not one of ours." The Space Monitoring Station Delta 7 hung in orbit 250 miles above Earth, a marvel of international cooperation. Its primary mission was to track space debris, warn of incoming natural objects, and monitor satellite traffic. But today, it was tracking something else entirely. "How fast is it moving now?" Alex asked, leaning closer to the screen. "That's the strangest part," replied Emma, the station's lead scientist. Her red hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes betraying her lack of sleep. "It was moving at nearly 1/10 the speed of light when we first detected it at the edge of the solar system yesterday. Now it's slowing down. Rapidly." "That's impossible," Tom said, shaking his head. "Nothing can change speed like that without burning up or breaking apart. And yet here we are," Alex muttered. He straightened up and made a decision. "Contact mission control. This is now a first contact scenario." The room fell silent. First contact. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. "Are you sure, sir?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We should run more tests before we—" "Look at the data, Emma." Alex cut her off, pointing at the screen. "It's changing course deliberately, slowing down as it approaches. This is not natural and not human-made. We need to prepare." 6 hours later, the Situation Room at the United Nations headquarters in New York was filled to capacity. World leaders and military commanders from every major nation sat around the large oval table, while aides and specialists lined the walls. Screens displayed the mysterious object, now clearly visible as a sleek, silvery vessel about half a mile long. "It's entered Earth orbit," announced General Williams, pointing to the latest trajectory plot. "Holding position approximately 300 miles up, over the Pacific Ocean." President Clark of the United States leaned forward. "Have we made contact?" "We've sent messages in all known languages and mathematical sequences," replied Dr. Rivera, head of the International Space Agency. "Radio, laser, even old-fashioned Morse code. No response." "What about its weapons systems?" asked the Russian president, his face grim on one of the video screens. Dr. Rivera shook her head. "We can't detect anything that looks like weapons, but that doesn't mean they're not there. Their technology is clearly far beyond ours." "How much time do we have before they do something?" The Chinese premier's voice was calm, but his knuckles were white as he gripped his pen. "That's the question, isn't it?" President Clark sighed. "We have no way of knowing their intentions." "I recommend we ready our defenses," General Williams said firmly. "Move our fleets to strategic positions, prepare missile defense systems, and evacuate major cities if possible." A murmur of agreement ran through the room, but Dr. Rivera raised her hand. "With all due respect, General, showing military force might be perceived as hostile. If they wanted to attack, they could have done so already. Their technology is vastly superior. So we just sit and wait." The French president's voice rose in frustration. "We stay ready, but we don't provoke," President Clark decided. "Continue attempts at communication, and pray they come in peace." Back on Delta 7, Commander Alex couldn't shake the feeling of dread as he watched the alien vessel through the station's powerful telescope. It hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, beautiful and terrifying in its perfect stillness. "Still no response to our signals?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing," Tom replied, rubbing his tired eyes. "It's like they're deliberately ignoring us." Emma floated up to the viewing port, her face reflected against the darkness of space. Or maybe they're studying us, learning our languages, observing our reactions. That's a comforting thought, Tom said with a humorless laugh. A soft beep from the communication console interrupted them. Commander, we're getting a direct call from the UN Secretary General, the communications officer announced. Alex pushed off from the window and floated over to the console. Put it through. The Secretary General's face appeared on screen, lines of worry etched deeply around his eyes. Commander Alex, I have a special request. Your station is closest to the alien vessel. We need you to attempt a direct approach. Alex felt his stomach tighten. Sir, with all due respect, Delta 7 is a monitoring station. We don't have the capability to. You have the emergency shuttle, the Secretary General interrupted. We need visual confirmation of any activity. Just get close enough to see if there are windows, doors, any sign of life. Do not attempt to board or make physical contact. Alex looked at his crew, saw the mix of fear and determination on their faces. Understood, sir. We'll prepare the shuttle immediately. 2 hours later, Alex and Emma were strapped into the small emergency shuttle, approaching the alien vessel with agonizing slowness. Keep the approach vector steady, Alex instructed, his eyes fixed on the looming shape ahead. Stop at 500 yards. Emma nodded, her hands steady on the controls despite her racing heart. Look at the surface, she whispered. It's so smooth. No seams, no rivets, nothing that looks like an entrance. The alien ship grew larger in their viewport, its surface reflecting the sunlight with an almost liquid shimmer. It was beautiful in an unsettling way. Are you recording everything? Alex asked, not taking his eyes off the vessel. Every wavelength we can detect, Emma confirmed. Infrared isn't showing any heat signatures. It's the same temperature as the surrounding space. Suddenly, a soft blue light began to pulse along the surface of the alien craft. Do you see that? Emma's voice rose with excitement. It's responding to our presence. The pulsing light grew stronger, forming a line that ran the length of the vessel. Pull back, Alex ordered, a sense of alarm rising in his chest. Get us some distance. Before Emma could react, the blue line widened, revealing an opening in the seemingly solid hull. Something emerged, a small pod-like object no bigger than a car. It's launching something, Alex said, activating the shuttle's emergency thrusters. Mission Control, do you copy? The alien vessel has deployed a smaller craft. We are retreating to safe distance. The pod ignored their retreat, accelerating past them toward Earth. Track it, Alex commanded as they raced back to Delta 7. Where is it heading? Emma worked the sensors frantically, calculating trajectory. It's heading for the northern hemisphere, North America. Looks like a rural area in the Midwest United States. As they docked with Delta 7, reports were already flooding in from Earth. The pod had landed in an empty field outside the small town of Meadowbrook, population 5,000. No explosion, no signs of aggression. Just silent, waiting presence. The deadly quiet before disaster. Alex thought grimly as he watched the news footage of military vehicles surrounding the landed pod. Or maybe, just maybe, the quiet before a new beginning. The pod's surface suddenly split open like a blooming flower. From within emerged a figure, clearly humanoid but not quite human, stepping onto Earth soil for the first time. First contact had begun. The being that stepped out of the pod stood just over 6 feet tall. Its body was humanoid but too perfect, skin smooth like polished marble, with a slight bluish tint. Its face had all the expected features, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but they were arranged with such symmetry that it looked more like a beautiful statue than a living creature. The eyes were the most striking feature, large, almond-shaped, and entirely silver with no visible pupils. The gathered soldiers raised their weapons instinctively, but Colonel James held up his hand. "Hold your fire," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien looked around slowly, taking in the circle of military vehicles and nervous soldiers. Then, to everyone's shock, it smiled, a perfect imitation of a human expression, and spoke in flawless English. "I am Tav, envoy of the collective. I come in peace and friendship to the people of Earth." Colonel James stepped forward cautiously. "I am Colonel James Thompson, United States Army. How do you know our language?" Tav tilted his head slightly. "We have been observing your world for some time. Your broadcasts travel through space. We have learned much about you." A chill ran down James's spine, despite the warm spring air. How long had they been watching? What else did they know? "Why are you here?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "To extend an invitation," Tav replied, his voice musical and pleasant. "Your species has reached a critical point in its development. The collective wishes to welcome humanity into the galactic community." 24 hours later, Tav stood before the United Nations General Assembly. The hall was packed beyond capacity, with world leaders who normally sent representatives now present in person. Billions watched the live broadcast around the world. "The collective spans 3,000 star systems," Tav explained, his voice carrying easily through the hushed chamber. "We are a peaceful alliance of species dedicated to advancement and harmony. Earth would be the newest member of our family." "And what would membership entail?" asked the Secretary General, leaning forward with intense interest. "Exchange of knowledge, access to our technology, protection from less friendly species that exist in the darkness between stars." Tav gestured gracefully. "We offer this because we see great potential in humanity." "And what do you want in return?" The question came from the Russian ambassador, his voice tinged with suspicion. Tav smiled his perfect smile. "Only friendship and a small outpost on your planet. A place where our representatives can live and work alongside humans, helping to integrate Earth into the greater community." The chamber erupted in excited whispers. The Secretary General raised his hands for quiet. "This is a momentous occasion," he said, "but we will need time to discuss." "Of course," Tav interrupted smoothly. "Take all the time you need. As a show of good faith, I am authorized to offer immediate gifts of technology." He waved his hand, and several small silver spheres floated out from behind him, hovering in the air. "Medical advances that will cure your most devastating diseases. Clean energy that will end your dependence on fossil fuels. Food production methods that will eliminate hunger." The whispers grew louder, more excited. Hope and greed battled with caution in the eyes of the assembled leaders. Captain Marcus Wade watched the broadcast from his office at Military Intelligence Headquarters, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. 20 years in the field had taught him to trust his instincts, and every instinct was screaming that something was wrong. "It's too perfect," he muttered to his assistant, Lieutenant Lisa Miller. "Too convenient." "Sir." Lisa looked up from her tablet. "The timing, the technology, the lack of demands." Marcus gestured at the screen where Tav was now answering questions with practiced ease. "Nobody gives something for nothing, especially not an advanced civilization that could probably take whatever they want by force." "Maybe they really are just peaceful," Lisa suggested, though her tone suggested she shared his doubts. "Maybe." Marcus tapped his fingers on the desk. "But I want to know more about these gifts before we accept them. Get me everything we have on the landing site. Soil samples, radiation readings, anything unusual. And find me our best xenobiologist." Dr. Jack Reed was not what Marcus had expected. The renowned xenobiologist was barely 30, with rumpled clothes and thick glasses that kept sliding down his nose. But his eyes were sharp with intelligence, and his reputation was impeccable. "You wanted to see me, Captain?" Reed asked, looking around the secure underground lab with open curiosity. "I need your help, Doctor," Marcus said, gesturing to the sealed container on the table. "This is a sample of material from the alien pod. I want to know everything about it." Reed's eyes lit up. "How did you get this?" "The site is under tight security." "Let's just say I still have friends in the field," Marcus cut him off. "Can you analyze it or not?" "Of course." Reed pulled on gloves and carefully opened the container. Inside was a small piece of the silvery material that made up the alien pod. This could take time. We may not have much. The UN is voting tomorrow on whether to accept the aliens' gifts. Reed looked up sharply. They're moving that fast, without proper research. Curing cancer is a powerful motivator, Marcus said grimly, as is clean energy and endless food. Nothing is without cost, Reed murmured, already setting up his equipment. Especially miracles. 3 days later, the first embassy of the collective was established in central Manhattan. A beautiful silvery building that seemed to grow overnight, rising seamlessly from the ground without construction crews or noise. Tav announced that a delegation of 12 representatives would arrive within the week to begin the process of integrating Earth into the collective. Marcus paced his office, frustration evident in every step. The world was embracing the aliens with open arms, while his investigation crawled along at a snail's pace. The few samples he'd managed to secure were proving nearly impossible to analyze with Earth technology. His secure phone buzzed. "Reed. Tell me you have something," Marcus answered without preamble. "I do." Reed's voice was tight with excitement or fear, Marcus couldn't tell which. "But not over the phone. Meet me at the lab. Now." When Marcus arrived, Reed was hunched over a microscope, his face pale. "What did you find?" Marcus asked, closing the door behind him. Reed looked up, his eyes wide behind his glasses. "The material from the pod. It's not just metal or plastic or any normal substance. It's partially organic. And it's active." "Active how?" Reed stepped back from the microscope. "It's responding to stimuli, changing its structure at a microscopic level. And look at this." He pulled up an image on his computer. "These are particles we found in the soil around the landing site, too small to see with the naked eye." Marcus leaned closer. The screen showed what looked like tiny machines, complex structures clearly not natural. "What am I looking at?" "Nanobots," Reed said simply. "Billions of them, released when the pod landed. They're in the air, the water, probably spreading across the country by now." "Doing what?" Marcus asked, dread settling in his stomach. "I don't know yet," Reed admitted, "but they're designed to interact with organic material, including human tissue." Marcus straightened up, his decision made. "Pack up everything you need. We're going off the grid." "What?" Reed blinked in confusion. "I've got a bad feeling about these friendly aliens," Marcus said, already heading for the door. "And I want answers before those 12 representatives arrive." Reed hurriedly began gathering his equipment. Outside, crowds celebrated in the streets, welcoming their new friends from the stars, blissfully unaware of the deadly quiet that had settled over Earth, the quiet that always comes before disaster. The cabin was small but well hidden, tucked away in the dense woods of the Appalachian Mountains. Once a vacation home belonging to Marcus's grandfather, it was now their base of operations. No internet, no cell service, and most importantly, no way for the mysterious nanobots to transmit data. Dr. Reed had set up his equipment on the wooden dining table, the scientific instruments looking strangely out of place against the rustic background. He hunched over a microscope, examining another sample from the alien pod. "Any progress?" Marcus asked, setting down 2 cups of coffee. Reed looked up, dark circles under his eyes showing his lack of sleep. "Yes and no. I've confirmed the nanobots can interact with human cells, but I can't determine the exact purpose. They seem dormant, waiting for something." Marcus frowned. "A signal, maybe? From the alien ship or the new arrivals?" "Possible." Reed took a grateful sip of coffee. "What about your end?" Marcus spread several papers on the table, old-fashioned, printed reports and photographs. Nothing digital that might be compromised. "I called in some favors from friends around the world," he explained. "People I trust. They'd been gathering information quietly." Reed picked up one of the photographs, a satellite image of what appeared to be a massive structure on a distant planet. "What am I looking at?" "That's from a deep space telescope. It's Kepler 186f, an Earth-like planet about 500 light-years away. Marcus pointed to the strange formation visible on the planet's surface. According to astronomical records, that structure wasn't there 50 years ago. The collective. Marcus nodded grimly. We think so. Now look at this. He pulled out another photo. This is Kepler 186, just 10 years later. Reed gasped. The planet's once blue oceans were now a muddy brown. The green landmasses were gray. And the strange structure had expanded to cover nearly a quarter of the visible surface. What happened? We don't know exactly, Marcus admitted, but we found similar patterns on 7 other planets in the last century. Each one was discovered to have intelligent life. Each one was likely contacted by the collective. And each one is now dead or dying. Reed set down the photos, his face pale. They're not here to help us. They're here to take over. That's my guess, Marcus agreed. The question is how. And why the elaborate charade? As if in answer, the small radio on the kitchen counter crackled to life with the daily news broadcast. They'd been keeping it on to monitor world events. Celebrations continue worldwide as the collective delegation arrives today, the announcer said cheerfully. The 12 representatives will be greeted with a special ceremony at the new embassy. In related news, the first medical centers using collective healing technology opened yesterday in major cities. Early reports claim miraculous results, with terminal cancer patients showing significant improvement after just one treatment. The World Health Organization calls it the greatest medical breakthrough in human history. Marcus switched off the radio with a disgusted flick of his wrist. They're moving faster than I expected. We need help, Reed said, standing up suddenly. We can't fight this alone. Who do you suggest? The government? The military? They're all too busy celebrating their new alien friends. Reed paced the small cabin. What about your assistant, Lisa? You said she was skeptical too. Marcus considered this. Maybe. And there's Jamie in communications. She's brilliant with signals and encryption. If anyone can figure out how the nanobots communicate, it's her. And we'll need someone who understands their technology better than I do, Reed added. I know an engineer, Pat. Worked on experimental propulsion systems before this. Unconventional thinker, but trustworthy. Marcus nodded slowly. All right, but we need to bring them in carefully. No electronic contact. 1 week later, their small team had grown to 5. Lisa arrived first, bringing with her classified reports on the alien embassy. Jamie followed 2 days later, carrying equipment that she swore couldn't be tracked. Pat was the last to join, arriving with a truck full of scavenged electronics and a wild gleam in his eyes. The nanobots are definitely receiving signals, Jamie announced on their 3rd night together. She had set up a sophisticated signal detector that she'd built herself. Short bursts, highly encrypted, coming from the embassy. Can you decode them? Marcus asked. Jamie shook her head. Not yet. It's unlike any encryption I've seen, but I can tell you the frequency is increasing. More signals every day. Pat, who had been tinkering with alien technology samples, looked up sharply. That matches what I'm seeing. The samples are becoming more active, like they're building up to something. The question is what? Reed muttered, reviewing his latest test results. The nanobots have spread throughout the water system, the air. They're in everything. Everyone. Including us. Lisa asked, her voice tight. Reed nodded grimly. Almost certainly. But being here, away from the main signal source, may be keeping them dormant in our systems. Marcus stood by the window, looking out at the darkening forest. We need to understand their endgame. Lisa, what about those historical records you were checking? Lisa pulled out her notebook. I found something interesting. Every 50 to 100 years, Earth experiences a major extinction event that scientists can't fully explain. Species just die off rapidly, sometimes up to 30% of all living things. Natural disasters, Jamie suggested. That's what's always been assumed, Lisa replied. But the pattern is too regular, and each event corresponds with increased meteor activity. Marcus turned from the window. You think the collective has visited before? Maybe they've been harvesting, taking what they need and leaving the rest to recover before coming back. Lisa looked around at the group. What if we're just a resource to them, like a crop that needs to be harvested periodically? A heavy silence fell over the cabin. Finally, Pat spoke up. I might have something that could help us find out. He reached into his bag and pulled out what looked like a small silver sphere, one of the gift devices from the collective. I managed to get one before I left. Are you insane? Marcus exclaimed. That thing could be tracking us right now. Relax, Pat said with a grin. I've got it inside a Faraday cage. No signals in or out. But if we can crack it open and see how it works. Reed moved closer, professional curiosity overcoming his caution. The medical ones supposedly cure cancer by restructuring cells. What if they're not curing people at all? What do you mean? Lisa asked. What if they're changing people, preparing them? Reed's eyes were wide with the horrible possibility. The nanobots, the medical cures, the clean energy devices being installed in homes around the world. They're all connected. Jamie snapped her fingers suddenly. The signal. I bet it's a countdown. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. To what? Activation, Jamie said simply. Whatever these devices and nanobots are meant to do, they're waiting for a signal to start. And with the main delegation arriving today, Marcus didn't need to finish the thought. Pat hefted the silver sphere. Then we better figure this out fast. Outside, the skies were clear and calm. Another quiet, beautiful day as humanity welcomed its destroyers with open arms, completely unaware of the disaster about to unfold. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows as Pat carefully dismantled the silver sphere. He worked with steady hands, using tools he had modified himself to avoid triggering any security mechanisms. Almost there, he muttered as the others watched. With a final delicate movement, the sphere split open, revealing a complex arrangement of crystalline structures and what looked like living tissue. What in the world? Reed leaned closer, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. It's biomechanical, Pat said, carefully probing the internal components. Like nothing I've ever seen. The crystal structures seem to be directing energy, but the biological components are responding somehow. Jamie had set up sensors around the dismantled device. I'm detecting low-level radiation and some kind of field effect I can't identify. Reed put on gloves and carefully extracted a sample of the biological material. This isn't just similar to the pod material. It's identical. All their technology seems to be partially alive. But what does it do? Marcus pressed, always focused on the practical threat. Lisa, who had been reviewing reports from around the world, looked up from her laptop. Whatever it does, it's working. Every country that's accepted collective technology is reporting the same thing. Miraculous medical cures, crops growing at impossible rates, energy production beyond anything we've achieved before. And no one's questioning it. Marcus asked in disbelief. Just the opposite, Lisa replied grimly. Anyone who raises concerns is being called a conspiracy theorist or anti-progress. The public approval rating for the collective is at 97%. Marcus paced the cabin. While we've been hiding out here, they've managed to get their technology into every aspect of human life. Medical facilities, power grids, food production, water treatment. It's the perfect invasion, Reed said quietly. No weapons, no resistance. They just walk right in and take over. Pat, still examining the device, suddenly sat up straight. Wait a minute. These crystal formations, they remind me of something. He rummaged through his bag and pulled out a scientific journal. Here, research on brain-computer interfaces. The patterns are similar. You think these devices interface with the human brain? Reed asked, alarmed. Not directly, Pat replied. But the nanobots could. They're small enough to cross the blood-brain barrier. If they're in our water, our food, they're in everyone, Jamie finished. And with the right signal. A heavy silence fell over the group as the horrifying possibility sank in. Control, Marcus said finally. They're going to control everyone. Turn humans into, what? Slaves? Puppets? Or worse, Reed suggested. Remember those planets we saw? What if they're not just taking over worlds? They're converting them, using the resources, including the intelligent life, to expand their collective. Lisa's laptop pinged with an alert. The delegation is giving a worldwide address in 6 hours. All channels, all platforms. They're calling it a message of unity. Marcus straightened up, decision made. That's when they'll do it. Send the activation signal. He looked around at the group. We need to warn everyone. How? Jamie asked. No one will believe us, and any electronic message we send will be blocked or discredited immediately. Pat's eyes lit up. Unless we use their own technology against them. He pointed to the dismantled sphere. These crystals, they're signal amplifiers, incredibly powerful ones. If we could reconfigure them, use them to broadcast on the same frequency as the nanobots, we could send our own message. Jamie caught on immediately. Or better yet, a countermeasure. What kind of countermeasure? Marcus asked. Reed had been quiet, thinking. Now he spoke up. If the nanobots are waiting for an activation signal, we could send a deactivation signal instead, or at least an interference pattern. But we'd need to get close to their main transmitter, Jamie pointed out. The embassy in Manhattan. And we'd need proof, Lisa added. Something so compelling that people couldn't ignore it. Marcus nodded slowly. I might have an answer for both problems. He pulled out a small black notebook from his pocket. Old school, nothing digital. While you've all been working on the tech, I've been calling in every favor I have. I've got someone inside the embassy, a maintenance worker who was skeptical from the start. What did they find? Lisa asked. Marcus opened the notebook. The basement levels of the embassy go down at least 20 stories deeper than the official plans show. And there's some kind of massive power source at the bottom. Energy readings off the charts. A transmitter, Jamie suggested. Or a portal, Pat said, his voice hushed. A way to bring more of them through once the takeover begins. Marcus continued. My contact also managed to get access to a restricted room. Saw something that convinced him I was right to be suspicious. He flipped to a page with a rough sketch. Holding cells. Hundreds of them. Currently empty. They're planning to take prisoners, Lisa whispered. Not just any prisoners. Marcus tapped the sketch. The cells had names on them. World leaders, military commanders, scientists, anyone who might lead a resistance. Reed looked grim. They've planned for everything. Not everything, Marcus said firmly. They haven't planned for us. He looked around at the small team. An intelligence officer, a scientist, an engineer, a communications expert, and an analyst. 5 people against an alien invasion. We know what they're doing. We have a way to fight back. And most importantly, they don't know about us. Jamie nodded, determination replacing fear. So what's the plan? We split up, Marcus decided. Pat and Reed. Finish building the countermeasure device. Make it portable. Jamie, I need you to hijack a satellite uplink, something powerful enough to broadcast globally once we trigger our signal. And me? Lisa asked. You're coming with me to Manhattan, Marcus told her. We're going to get into that embassy, place the device, and get proof of what they're planning. That's suicide, Pat said bluntly. Maybe, Marcus acknowledged. But if those aliens send their activation signal, humanity as we know it ends. And I'm not letting that happen without a fight. Reed looked at the dismantled alien technology. We have about 5 hours to put this together and get to New York. Then we better get moving, Marcus said. Outside, the sun continued to rise in a perfectly clear sky. Birds sang in the trees. All across America, people were going about their normal lives, excited about the special broadcast scheduled for that evening. The deadly quiet before disaster had never felt so peaceful. The streets of Manhattan were crowded with excited people heading toward the giant screens set up in Times Square. Everyone wanted to witness the collective special broadcast. No one paid attention to the maintenance van that pulled up behind the embassy, or the two workers who stepped out wearing uniforms with the building management company logo. "Security is tight," Marcus muttered to Lisa as they approached the service entrance. "Stay alert." Lisa nodded, adjusting the tool belt around her waist. Hidden among the tools was Pat's completed device, a modified version of the alien sphere that would, hopefully, disrupt the activation signal. In her pocket was a small but powerful camera. Evidence would mean nothing if they couldn't get out alive to share it. Marcus showed the fake IDs to the guard at the door. "Maintenance. Got a report of a water leak in the basement." The guard barely glanced at them. His eyes had a slight silver sheen, a sign that the nanobots in his system were already partially active. "Proceed to the service elevator," he said in a flat voice. Once inside the elevator, Marcus took a deep breath. That was too easy. "They're not expecting resistance," Lisa whispered. "Why would they? Everyone loves them." The elevator descended past the ground floor, into the sub-basements, but instead of stopping at the bottom floor shown on the building plans, it kept going down. "How deep does this go?" Lisa wondered. "We're about to find out," Marcus replied grimly. Meanwhile, in a small office building 30 blocks away, Jamie worked furiously at her computer. She had managed to hack into a satellite uplink facility, giving her access to a global broadcasting system. All she needed now was the signal from Marcus and Lisa. "Any word?" Reed asked, pacing behind her. Jamie shook her head. "Nothing yet. They should be in position in about 10 minutes. Pat was making final adjustments to a second countermeasure device, a backup in case the first one failed. "I still don't understand why they're doing this," he muttered. "If they have the technology to travel between stars, why not just take what they want by force?" "Maybe they can't," Reed suggested. "Their physical forms might be weak, their numbers small. Maybe they need us, our bodies, our planet, intact." Jamie's computer suddenly beeped. "I'm picking up a massive energy surge from the embassy. Whatever they're planning, it's starting to power up." The elevator finally stopped at the 20th sublevel. When the doors opened, Marcus and Lisa found themselves in a vast chamber filled with humming machinery. In the center was a towering crystal structure, pulsing with blue energy. "The transmitter," Marcus whispered. They stepped out cautiously. The chamber appeared empty of people or aliens, but cameras were mounted on the walls. "We need to move fast," Marcus said. "Place the device as close to the central structure as possible." Lisa nodded and began moving toward the crystal tower. Suddenly, a voice spoke from behind them. "I was wondering when someone would figure it out." They spun around to find Tav standing there, his perfect form seeming to glow slightly in the blue light of the chamber. "You," Marcus said, reaching for the gun hidden under his uniform. Tav smiled his perfect smile. "Please, don't bother. Your primitive weapons can't harm me." "What are you?" Lisa demanded, subtly moving her hand toward the device hidden in her tool belt. "I am a messenger," Tav replied calmly. "A scout. The first wave." He gestured to the crystal structure. "Beautiful, isn't it? When activated, it will connect every nanomachine we've distributed across your planet. Every human who has accepted our gifts will become part of the collective." "Mind control," Marcus stated flatly. Tav shook his head. "Not control. Conversion. Your bodies will remain, but your consciousness will join ours. Your planet's resources will feed our expansion. It's actually quite merciful. Most species don't get to live on as part of something greater." Lisa had managed to activate the camera in her pocket. Every word was being recorded. "Why the charade?" Marcus asked, keeping Tav's attention. "Why pretend to be friendly? We learned long ago that conquest through violence is inefficient, Tav explained. Too much damage to valuable resources. This way, you invited us in. You spread our technology yourselves, eager for its benefits. Not everyone, Marcus said defiantly. Tav's smile widened slightly. A handful of skeptics doesn't concern us. Once the majority is converted, the rest will follow or be eliminated. What about the other delegation members? Lisa asked. There is no delegation, Tav said simply. There is only me and the ship. The others are merely projections, a comforting illusion while the real work happens below. And what's behind Jupiter? Marcus asked, remembering the strange readings they had detected. For the first time, Tav looked surprised. You know about that? Impressive. Those are the harvester ships. Once the conversion is complete, they will come to collect the transformed resources. Lisa had edged closer to the crystal structure. Just a few more steps. It won't work, Marcus said confidently. Humanity won't submit so easily. Tav laughed, a musical sound with no warmth in it. You already have. The broadcast begins in 2 minutes. Every human watching or listening will receive the activation signal. And with your world's obsession with media, that's nearly everyone. In one swift motion, Lisa pulled out the device and threw it toward the base of the crystal tower. Tav moved with inhuman speed, but not quite fast enough. The device landed, activated, and sent out a pulse of energy that made the crystal structure flicker. No, Tav cried, his perfect face showing real emotion for the first time. Rage. Marcus pulled Lisa toward the elevator. Run. In her makeshift command center, Janie watched her monitors light up. I've got their signal. And the data. Oh my God. We were right. It's all here. Reed leaned over her shoulder. Can you broadcast it? Already on it, Jamie replied, fingers flying over the keyboard. Sending the countermeasure signal and the evidence simultaneously. Every screen, every speaker, worldwide. As Marcus and Lisa burst out of the embassy, chaos was erupting. The giant screens in Times Square, which had been prepared to show Tav's message of unity, instead display the recorded confession and technical data about the nanobots. People were stopping, staring in shock at the evidence of the planned takeover. Look, Lisa pointed upward. The alien ship, which had been hovering silently above the city since Tav's arrival, was suddenly active. Lights pulsed along its surface. They're changing plans, Marcus realized. Going for a direct attack now that the deception is exposed. All across the city, people who had been standing in confused groups were now looking up at the ship with dawning anger. The spell of peaceful acceptance was broken. Then, something unexpected happened. Military jets appeared in the sky, dozens of them, surrounding the alien vessel. Marcus's secure phone buzzed. It was Jamie. It worked, she shouted over the line. The military saw the evidence. They're scrambling everything they've got. And that's not all. Look behind Jupiter. Marcus didn't need to look to know what was happening. The ships hiding there would be moving, preparing for the harvest that would now be a battle instead. We still have the alien technology, he realized. The same tech they plan to use against us. Lisa grinned, and now we know how it works. Around them, people were organizing, helping each other, preparing for a fight. Not running in panic, but standing together. The deadly quiet was over. Now came humanity's answer to the attempted disaster. The alien ship fired its first weapon, a blue energy beam that sliced through a building. But it was met with an immediate response from the military jets, which fired missiles that actually damaged the vessel's surface. How is that possible? Lisa wondered. Their technology is so advanced. They weren't prepared for resistance, Marcus said, understanding dawning. They've probably never had to fight a real battle. Why develop defenses when your invasions are always welcomed with open arms? As if confirming his theory, the alien ship began to retreat upward, trying to escape Earth's atmosphere. Several military craft pursued it. Marcus's phone rang again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously. "Captain Wade," a stern voice asked. "This is General Mitchell, Joint Chiefs. I believe we owe you and your team a debt of gratitude, and I think we could use your expertise right now." Marcus looked at Lisa, then up at the sky where humanity's first interstellar battle was unfolding. The fight would be difficult, the path forward uncertain. But one thing was clear: the deadly quiet was over, and humanity would not go quietly. "We're on our way, General," he said, "and we have some ideas about those ships behind Jupiter you might want to hear."